Hi, I'm Maureen Kilby and welcome to my studio. I decided to do a little bit of a blurb or video on color theory with colored pencils. I get asked a lot of questions. What pencils do I use? What colors do I choose? What kind of paper do I use? They're all hard questions to answer because you have to do a little bit of experimenting. So I've been delving into different papers, different colored pencils that I'm not used to using. And so I came up with my first initial bit of colored pencils for skin tones. Now, the papers that I'm choosing are papers that I've used in the past for graphite. One being Strathmore Bristol Smooth 300 or 400 series. It's a very smooth paper, best for graphite. And when I say best for graphite, that means that it takes lots and lots of layers. But as far as colored pencil, that's whole different planet. Colored pencil tends to build up quicker and thicker, so it won't take as many layers. So you have to choose your pencils accordingly. Now, I oil paint every day, and so I also studied color theory for 2 years. I always revert back to the old adage of skin tones are made up of red and yellow. In the spectrum of the primary colors, blue, yellow, red, blue being cool, yellow and red being warm. If you take a yellow and a red and you mix them together, depending on the yellow and the red, meaning pink and cream for colored pencil, you're going to get a really nice skin tone. Now, there are cool areas in your skin. You can tell here on my neck, it's darker than it is here because of the bones. So there's a lot of factors to take into consideration, but there's more shadow here, more wrinkles too. And so you have to think about those kinds of things when you're choosing your pencil colors. So I'm going to come over here to my paper. I've been playing around with papers and different portraits. I've done several times of the same person on different papers. So I'll actually do 4 or 5 different drawings of the same person with different papers. So don't be alarmed. It's kind of a test page. This is Arches paper, which I like. I used to use it a lot when I was doing graphite. I'm not happy with this, not at all. Because I'm so used to using Strathmore Bristol Smooth and graphite, I know what to expect from the paper. Now, Arches watercolor hot press paper, I think it's 140 pound, is a lovely paper, especially for watercolor colored pencils. They're really, really nice. But the pencils that I chose didn't like the paper so much. There's a lot of blotchiness up in here, especially when I get into the darker pencils. The first 2 pencils were great. You can tell it's nice and smooth. And these 2 colors are Derwent Light Fast, which I'm really learning to like quite a bit, Flesh Pink, and Wheat. Really like those pencils. And they work really well on this kind of paper. Now, those 2 pencils are oil-based pencils. They're very dry, which kind of reminds me a little bit of graphite. Not a fan of Prismacolor. And so when I went through the Wheat and the Flesh Pink, well, pink being first, Wheat being second, and then I went to a very waxy pencil called Luminance by Caran d'Ache. Now, let me tell you, Caran d'Ache Luminance pencils are fantastic. But you have to remember that combinations of different brands of pencils can result in either this kind of a disaster on that kind of paper, or they can blend beautifully. So what do? You experiment. So for me, I went ahead and experimented here with Flesh Pink Derwent Light Fast, Wheat Derwent Light Fast, and then I went to another luminance pencil called Burnt Sienna 10%. Well, that actually went okay. I didn't really mind that too much, but I could start to tell that the paper, because it's a watercolor paper, and then there is a sizing on watercolor paper. It actually repels water, which is what watercolor paper is supposed to do. It repels water. Strathmore Bristol Smooth is not a watercolor paper. But see, I'm starting to see, and let me zoom in, it's all grainy. Now everybody tells me, oh, that's just the nature of the beast. Well, I'm not really liking the beast, because this beast here is not used to this kind of pilling. I mean, I like what's going on here, and I can be okay with it up to this point, but in the reference picture, that side of her face is fairly dark. I'll have to back it up a little bit. So that's a pretty dark side of her face. And that right here is not dark enough. So I made the mistake of going over the Burnt Sienna 10% here with a gorgeous color by Caran d'Ache Luminance called Carmine Lake. It started to pick up, after the paper started to pill a little bit, it started to pick up dark areas a little bit. And I'm kind of going along, and I'm like, oh, this isn't so bad. And then, boom, it'll hit something. And I am such a perfectionist that I like beautifully smooth skin. I'm not talking airbrush skin. I don't care for that too much. Let me see if I can zoom in and make this focus a little bit better. There we go. Just not a big fan of that. So, some people can be okay with it. I'm just not. It's not to my liking. So that's a personal preference for me. So what do? Do I eliminate the waxy pencils? That would be my conclusion. I'm not a big fan of waxy pencils. I do like Pablos. Now Pablos, I don't know, for some reason they don't act like a wax pencil. But the luminants are highly waxy. So I could go ahead and take my Flesh Pink again. Let's pop that down so you can see it a little bit better. And let's just say I'm going over the whole face again with Wheat. Then I'm going to pull out another Derwent Light Fast pencil called Dusky, and not dusty, I mean dusky. Dusky Pink. Now since these pencils, these Derwent Light Fasts are a little bit drier, they remind me of Lyra's. They're called Polychromo, not the Faber-Castell. They're polys. They're made by Rembrandt, and they're called Lyra's, and they are oil-based, and they're very dry. But I'm kind of liking what I'm seeing here. Now, what I'm going to do is, now remember, this is just a test piece. I'm going to go ahead and put the Burnt Sienna above that and check the value and see if those values are pretty much the same. I really like the Burnt Sienna because it has a bit of brown in it. This to me looks more natural. This is actually a little too pinky, but I'm going to go with it because I like the results that it's giving me. And it's also a darker color. We always go light to dark in colored pencil. I feel like I'm pushing a little bit harder than normal. That's due to the dryness of the pencil. I'm not seeing any blotchy, pilly areas, not at all. Of course, I don't really have a very dark pencil going onto the paper yet. That's what's next. I'm going to take another Derwent Light Fast pencil called Sienna. Now, to me, that's a little too orange, but it's still within the value ranges of her skin. In oil painting, I look for skin tones because I do a lot of oil painting portraits. I look for transparency. It's a block of color that you can still feel and see the skin without being just a slab of color. When I do oil painting videos, I'll be sure to remember to remind you what that means. I'm kind of saying that it's, instead of just slapping a color on there and not being able to see through the paint, it needs to be more transparent. This looks more like skin to me. So I'm really liking this a lot. It's more to my taste. I look at other people, other colored pencil portrait artists, and there's some really good ones out there. And I really study their pencil strokes and their colors and their layering process. So I'm actually really liking that, and it's not as blotchy. And you can see these little pilled areas with the Carmine Lake. Well, the camera may be too close, so it's going to be out of focus. So we'll pull that back a little bit, and they'll probably show up. Yeah. See these little pilled areas like that? That drives me absolutely nuts. So I'm pretty happy with what I've got so far. Depending on the picture, it's going to determine how cool and how warm the skin tones are. To me, this looks very warm. So I would not come in with the Carmine Lake or any of the luminance at this point. I guess I would be saying the old adage is, I don't like to mix other brands of pencils unless I've tested them out first. So basically I'm sticking with Derwent Light Fast for this type of paper. We're going to try another paper here in a minute. So how do I get this color here to match this color down in here? Now this looks lighter than what I'm seeing, so there might be too much light here in the room. So I found another color called Natural Brown, and it's a Derwent Light Fast. So now I'm really going to lighten up on my pressure. And that seems to be a very cool brown, and I've never used this pencil before. And I mean really skimming over the paper. Just barely whisper, touching it. I'm not seeing any pilling at all. It is very brown, but not overwhelming. Now you're seeing this for the first time as much as I am. I have not used these before, so we're really experimenting here. I'm seeing a little bit of pilling, but I just think that's what everybody says. It's just the nature of the beast. As long as it's not overwhelming and blotchy like this is up here, I'm actually liking this okay. But I would probably choose another color. There's another color called Dark Honey, which I didn't get in the mail because it's on back order. So I would just continue on with the sienna, the one that I used before, and keep it at that. And give it a second layer. It's a little bit reddish to me, but I think it'll be fine. If you want a cool red down, you use either a blue or a green. Now there's a pretty cool color called Heather by Derwent Light Fast, and that might cool it down just a tiny little bit. And that works really well. Look at that. How pretty is that? Perfect. So, I have found my color combinations. For me, I like the Derwent Light Fast for the Arches paper. And I'll put these in order. And we'll go ahead and throw the natural brown in there just for some dark areas. You might have some turning of the light here. As long as it doesn't become too brown. I would actually alternate, or not alternate, but use a dark honey instead of the dark brown. It's very brown. So I would use Pink Flesh. Let's pull those up a little bit so you can see them. Sorry, Flesh Pink, Wheat, Dusky Pink, Sienna, and if you want to cool it, use a nice light violet. This one's called Heather. And then to make it darker, I would try a Dark Honey or something like that. So Derwent Light Fast works really well with this Arches paper. I'm loving that. Next, we're going to try some Strathmore Bristol Smooth. Okay, now you can see I've done a lot of patch testing on this, or testing patches. I'm sure if you've taken these classes before, this is a familiar picture. And what I will do is sketch out a portrait one time, and then sometimes I'll print it on the paper that I want to use. So I actually sketched this out, and then I printed this on Strathmore Bristol Smooth 300. I don't really see a lot of difference between the 3 and the 400, but I'm sure that there is. I prefer the 300. It's just a tiny bit toothier. So I'm going to use the same color combinations as I did before by selecting Flesh Pink, which you probably already can see that I've done. Here is her reference picture. So this is a little bit lighter, but she does have a little bit more violet in her skin. So I'm going to tuck that in behind. And I'm going to start with Flesh Pink. This is a very slick paper, and it's something that I am completely used to. I've been using it for about 18 years, along with Arches and Fabriano. I have used Fabriano with portraits before, and I was not happy with that. So now I'm using Wheat. And then I'm going to go to a dusky pink here. So that is going to be your main 3 colors for your skin tone. No blotchiness that I can tell. Now I'm going to take my sienna, which is darker, start building the turn of the chin up towards her face or her mouth, and stop and start over and do the same thing again. So I'm really liking that, but I also feel that there's a little bit more violet in her skin. So I'm going to go over with Heather, which adds a violet tone. Look how pretty that is. That really pulled it into perspective for me. That really pulled it into a natural skin color. I've always been afraid and have been taught that too much red makes the skin look more like a Kodak orange color. And this is really going to cool down this portion of the lighter areas in her skin. But I'm also seeing a lot of pilling. And that may be due to the pigment in the pencil. Sometimes these pigments, if you don't know, and I learned this through oil painting, certain pigments can break apart a little bit more than others. So I'm going to go back to my dusky pink real quick and see if I can push some of that back down. Nope. Not a lot. But overall, I'm still pretty happy with those colors. Let me zoom in a little and see if you can see that it's not too terribly blotchy. Up through here, I think this was a perfect skin tone, and I achieved that by just using the Flesh Pink, Wheat, and Heather. No dusky pink. So the dusky pink kind of created a little bit of an issue for me. This to me was perfect. And let's try and recreate that real quick. Flesh Pink, which I love. Wheat. And I'm doing this pretty fast. Normally I wouldn't do that. And Heather. Technique definitely plays a huge role in how you lay down your pencil. Now try dusky pink. So that color combination wasn't so good for me. I'm not sure how I got that to look so good, but maybe by not pushing so hard or putting one pencil before the other. Hand pressure. This time I used wheat first and then flesh pink and then heather. And I also went at an angle. So sometimes putting another pencil in front of another one, keeping your pencils sharp. I use a Mega Color sharpener. They're great. They're quick. They're quiet. Sometimes I'll scratch those little pilly parts out. So I like that. I like this color combination a lot. Maybe I'll use purple first. Makes it more smooth, that's for sure. Now, mind you, these are only in the more violet areas, not for the whole entire face. Then I will try flesh pink. Then wheat. I like it. I like that a lot. So in this particular lesson, I liked for the Strathmore Bristol Smooth 300, I liked heather first, flesh pink second, and wheat third. Also, don't forget your color combinations. What you can do is write them down. So this is how I take notes. This one being my favorite would be Derwent Light Fast, heather, flesh pink, and wheat. I liked this one too, but for some reason I must have gotten lucky. This one would be, and I would just say number 1. I really like that. This was flesh pink, wheat, and heather. I'd say these two are number 2 on my list. Number 3 would be, this is all Derwent Light Fast, flesh pink, wheat, dusky pink, and heather. Big question mark. Not really liking that. And then I think I put sienna in here. So this becomes your own personal little color chart. Now what happens when you put a luminance, a highly waxy pencil over all of this? Well, I kind of started to do that up here, which wasn't so bad. So I'm going to choose this color here, which is Carmine Lake. And believe it or not, it actually comes out gorgeous. So this was a huge learning curve or lesson for me, that oil-based pencils should go down first and waxy pencils should go over that. They seem to work better in that particular order. So this was a good color combination over here. So this one was Flesh Pink, Wheat, Heather, and then Luminance Carmine Lake. I like that. This is a great little color chart that you can cut out and put in a book and keep it for future reference. Or you can draw out a grid with a ruler and do your color charts there. You can do your little color swatches there. I actually like to do them on a face so that I can look at the reference picture and refer to both. This makes a nice comparison. So I could take this and cut it out and staple it to this so that I know. And after a while you kind of get used to those pencils and they'll become routine. Now for this color combination, I used Strathmore Bristol Vellum. Now Bristol Vellum is toothier than the Strathmore Bristol Smooth. I had to really work this a lot, and I think I used Derwent Light Fast Flesh Pink, Wheat, and possibly I went over it with Burnt Sienna 10% and then Light Aubergine Luminance. Those last two pencils I mentioned were Luminance pencils. And I do like the Light Aubergine. That's a really neat color, which I don't have it out right now. But I probably would have come in and used the Heather instead of the Light Aubergine or the Luminance 10% Burnt Sienna, because it just turned out too blotchy, so I wasn't really happy with that. She had a lot of purple in her skin on that particular photo shoot day. With this paper, I haven't really experimented too much with it. I don't mind it at all. It's actually not a bad paper. So I'll probably play around with it. I mean, we could probably do a little swatch right now. By starting out with Flesh Pink. Now remind you, this is a little bit toothier. Kind of reminds me of Fabriano a little bit, but it's not a watercolor paper. So that was Flesh Pink. This is Wheat. And I have a feeling that the Heather Derwent Light Fast is going to be quite grainy, so I'm going to be really careful with it and skim over the top. Yeah, it's already starting to pill with those little dark specks that I just don't like. So that would not be a color combination that I would use. If I was going to do this, over here, I'll do another little swatch, and I would start with heather in those violet areas, not all over the face. Then flesh pink. And then wheat. It's not bad. I can live with that. So another aspect of the waxy versus oil versus smooth versus watercolor paper and different toothier papers is looking for opportunities to use different pencils, obviously. I picked up the Caran d'Ache. This is the Portrait Assortment set. Remember, these are waxy pencils. Sometimes the pigments can break apart, and I'm not really a big fan of that. But they have some really, really luscious colors. Hopefully I won't tip that over too far where they'll fall out. These are great. But do they work for you? So let's try a different paper called Fabriano. I think it's 140 pound hot press. I only use hot press. Cold press is only for watercolor. That's my opinion. And so the hot press is much smoother, but it's very cottony, very soft. So let's take a look at the Fabriano. Okay, I've got, this is all Derwent Light Fast, so we're not going to work up in here. We're going to only use waxy pencils. Let's see how that goes. I've never actually tried this, so this ought to be fun. Going from light to dark, let's pull that out just a little bit. These look a little bit lighter to you on the screen than they do to me. I think I would pick light flesh 10%. Depending on the color of the skin, which is very dark. Maybe we can pull that camera back and it won't be so bright. There, that's about right. So we have our yellow. That's a pretty yellow pencil. And then I would choose a pink, kind of a neutral pink, out of this Portrait Assortment. Well, this has got more blue in it. Maybe more yellow would be nice. This pink actually has more yellow in it than this pink. This is darker. It's probably got more blue in it. Oops, sorry. So I would go with the one with more yellow. Now this is Dark Flesh 5%. I'm going to set that kind of aside for a minute. And I'm going to put this over here. I'm going to do a little bit of experimenting here. Down below the neck with these three pencils. Hopefully that'll focus. Sometimes it doesn't always focus right away. Kind of has to follow and focus down to the paper. There we go. Sorry about that. Cameras can be a little slow sometimes. So this is my yellow, and these are my two pinks, and my yellow and my pink, and then this is kind of an in-betweener. So I'm going to test this color out. It's a nice champagne yellow. Very soft on the paper. I like that. This one is called Violet Pink. Wow, these colors are rich and dark. And this one is called Dark Flesh 5%. So that has more brown in it. It's really pretty. So in my opinion, according to her face, what color combinations would you use first, second, and third? Well, I'm going to say, gosh, I don't know. Let's try. Let's try the Light Flesh 10% first. Very smooth. I'm going to try the Violet Pink second. And then to sort of cool it down with this warmish brown. Well, that's not really going to cool it. It's definitely going to change the temperature and the chroma. Very nice. So I think we kind of nailed that color combination right there. So I would start up here and literally do the whole neck. Let's position the camera so that you can see what I'm doing without a whole lot of glare. And these pencils here together are not blotchy whatsoever when combined with all three. But we haven't put any darks in there yet, so time will tell. I definitely have to use a different hand pressure and a different technique for these pencils. I have to really skim over the paper because they are so rich. Now we're going to go with the Violet Pink. Definitely see some pilling coming up, but I'm just going to deal with it. Maybe shorten my strokes a bit so that it's smoother. And then I'm going to use the Dark Flesh 5% over that. It's a really nice color combination. They marry well together. Definitely don't have to put much pressure or effort into these waxy pencils. But I am seeing some blotchiness come up that I'm just not a big fan of. So what happens when you put a darker color like a Carmine Lake to make that really, really pop? See these little blotchy spots? Yeah, I don't like those. They drive me crazy. But I guess it's just something that you have to live with, get used to, or go to a different pencil and a different paper. but it's not bad. I like it. I like the fact that they layer really nicely over each other. So these pencils are good for my taste. They're excellent pencils all the way around. These are the Luminance. Let's turn them this way so you can see the names. So I'd start with Light Flesh, 10%, Violet Pink, Dark Flesh, 5%, and a little bit of Carmine Lake for this particular picture, which has those values in there. So let's try and compare the two. They're pretty close. So yeah, I like that color combination, and I like these pencils. Luminance with Luminance. Derwent with Derwent. Well, I hope that this little tutorial has helped you kind of figure out some issues with what pencils to use, what paper to use, what pencils to use with what paper, color combinations, switching the color combinations. It can be mind-boggling. So having someone help you to sort those issues out for you is always really helpful. So I hope this has been one of those opportunities for you to get the help or get questions that you have answered. There's a million possibilities. There's a million kinds of combinations. There's so many different papers that even I haven't even tried, and I've been doing this for 18, 19 years. I really like portraits. They're my specialty. I will say that in the last 8 years, that's all I've been doing with is portraits. In colored pencil, I've dabbled, but mostly it's graphite. I adore colored pencil combinations in any shape or form with birds. Birds are probably something I prefer in colored pencil over portraits. And I love using watercolor colored pencils. We'll do another video on that because we're going to do some bonsai trees and birds combined together with watercolor colored pencils. And just to give you a little insight on that, I use Faber-Castell Albrecht Dürer watercolor pencils. I use Caran d'Ache Supracolors, Caran d'Ache Museums, and Caran d'Ache Neocolors. I think they're Neocolored 1 or 2, whichever one is water soluble. So that's going to be another fun color theory video that you get to enjoy. I'm not saying go out and buy all these pencils because that's a lot of money. I've collected a lot of pencils and things like that over the years, and very few sets that I've ever bought. So have fun with this. This is really all about you finding your way into your art journey and what you like, what you enjoy, and hopefully this video takes a little bit of frustration out of some of this. So have fun with it, enjoy it, experiment, and hopefully you'll join me again. Thanks for joining me.